Iraq is like any other country. Once we go away from conflict, we go towards peace, the same thing happens. Iraqis are no different. This is the challenges of investing in a place like Iraq. AI is a tremendous development.
Welcome everyone to the next in AI4Iraq's exclusive interview series. My name is Rayan, with me Iman in Hong Kong, as well as Amir and Hassan in Baghdad. It is a privilege to welcome Syed Ahmed Tabaqchalli to the show. Syed Ahmed has an unrivaled list of accomplishments, but just to name a few, he is a fellow at the Institute of Regional and International Studies at the American University of Iraq in Salemi, a board member of the Baghdad Business School Center, as well as a visiting fellow at the London School of Economics Middle East Center. Syed Ahmed has over 25 years of experience in capital markets across the US and Middle East and is the chief strategist of the Asia Frontier Capital Iraq Fund, which has recently seen strong inflows and performance. Syed Ahmed, welcome to AI4Iraq.
مرحبا بكم جميعا في المقابلة الحصرية التالية في AI4Iraq. اسمي أمير ومعي هنا حسن في بغداد، وكذلك إيمان وريان في هونغ كونغ. أرحب بالسيد أحمد طبقچلي في العرب. يتمتع السيد أحمد بقائمة لا مثيل لها من الإنجازات والأوسمة، ولكن على سبيل المثال للحصر فهو الزميل في معهد الدراسات الإقليمية والدولية IRIS في الجامعة الأمريكية في العراق، وسليمي عضو مجلس إدارة كلية إدارة الأعمال في بغداد، بالإضافة إلى كونه زميلا زائرا في مركز الشرق الأوسط في كلية لندن للاقتصاد. يتمتع السيد أحمد بخبرة تزيد عن 25 عاما في أسواق رأس المال في جميع أنحاء الولايات المتحدة والشرق الأوسط، وكبير استراتيجي لصندوق آسيا فورنتير كابيتال العراق الذي شهد مؤخرا تدفقات قوية وأداء قويا. مرحبا بالسيد أحمد طبقچلي في قناة AI4Iraq.
أهلا وسهلا. مثل ما نقول بالعراقي سبع صنايع والبخت ضايع، بس إن شاء الله ما ضايع هالمرة هاي. تفضلوا. Go ahead.
Hello, Syed Ahmed. This is Iman in Hong Kong. Syed Ahmed, the Iraqi stock market has seen tremendous growth over the last several years, with more and more high-quality companies being listed and a sustained increase in volume. How would you summarize the current state of the market compared to its counterparts in the Middle East? And what do you expect the future to bring?
Well, that's a very interesting question. And the thing is, got to put in perspective. Keep in mind, by the way, before I go on or before I describe, we're not providing investment advice for anybody. We're not telling people to invest and not to invest, but giving a general observation on Iraq, because I think investing is something very serious. People have to do a lot of work. They got to do multiple sources and so forth. So this is in a way. But to put you in perspective, in a sense, the Iraq Stock Exchange is very similar to what's called frontier markets. I don't know if you are familiar with markets and stuff. Markets are almost like people in a way. So you have what's called developed markets, like people like myself, for example, are old, but they're well established and so forth. That's what you look at markets like the US, like Europe and so forth. Then you have emerging markets, which is more like teenagers with potential, right? And then you have frontier markets, which is more like people like your age in a way, whereby you're still unmature, still not there, but you got tremendous potential. Now, each of them reflects different characteristics, different risk-reward ratios, and different ways of dealing with them. Iraq is a frontier market, but also it is almost a frontier market of a frontier market, in the sense that you as Iraqis are very aware of our history. We have a very turbulent history, or we've had a very turbulent history. We've had a history of enormous conflicts. Thank goodness that all of you are too young to remember. Too young to actually to be ever in it, but your elders and your grandparents would tell you, we have been in a state of a conflict since basically 1980s. We had the Iran-Iraq war, followed by the invasion of Kuwait, followed by the sanctions, which were the most crippling sanctions in the world. And then we have all that followed by the US invasion, and then civil war. And then if that was not enough, we had Daesh, right? What that meant basically, because basically in a way, stock markets reflect two things, reflect basically the economy and reflect the private sector in a way. The stock market's basic function in a way is to provide capital for companies. Companies need to grow, whether they are tiny companies or they're older companies, all need cash and money to grow. Now they get that lending from banks, but also through equity. They list their shares on the market. So that is one thing, and the other thing is the safety and the environment that we're in. In a way, you can't have a stock exchange when you have no profit. So Iraq, in a way, given our years of conflict, we had a crippled private sector. We had pretty much non-existent private sector. We had no security, no developments, no tools. So our market is super frontier. And yes, we've seen tremendous performance the last couple of years, but we've got to keep in mind, by the way, the last couple of years, the market was done so well, right? I mean, anybody who looks at it today, we're sort of like, today and the last month or so, we've made new highs. But keep in mind, we're barely got back to the 2014 high. So whereas other markets are multiple or stages higher than 2014, we just got back to our 2014 high, right? So in a way, you got to put that in perspective. It's almost like we, as a country and as a market, we fell through a massive hole, and we're climbing our way out of a hole. Right? So the comparisons have got to keep in that. Even the gains, you got to keep them in mind, because when you have something that's growing like this, you say, oh well, from here to here is not much. But when something's gone to zero and goes to 0 to 1, it looks like great growth. So you got to keep it in perspective. The way I look at it, and the way I look at Iraq and the market and so forth. Let's leave the market, but Iraq, in a way, as I said to you, all of this stuff. What has happened in Iraq that makes it so interesting a place to look at, either to live in, by the way, to visit, or to invest in? So neither, I'm not making a recommendation on any of those. But in a sense, you guys, are old enough to remember COVID, right? Now, for us, for Iraq, we've had a relative stability compared after COVID compared to every other period. And you would say, wow, what, COVID relative stability? Or you say, what, the 2024 oil prices? Or we say all of these things, but or the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. But for us in Iraq, for most Iraqis, that is nothing compared to what we've had before. So we've had a degree of stability. And again, the question is relative. It's compared to our own history. To our own history, it's been a period of stability. So what it meant, basically, it meant businesses, individuals, they have a predictable environment that they can think about. Like, what is likely to happen. And that allowed people to begin to spend on their homes, to develop property, to develop supermarket, to do stuff and build and so forth. We've added to it in a way. We've had a pretty good year in terms of financially in 2022 with high oil prices. We as an economy are very dependent on the government, which meant basically the government had enough money to spend. So we've had that. Then we've had some developments. I'm not going to go to that now, but developments that speed up development of the banking system. And when they do that, because no economy, no private sector can exist without a banking system, or at least the one as we know. Maybe there are some in Mars or in elsewhere that don't have that, but here in the world that we know, we need that. So all of this stuff is providing an environment whereby if you go today to Baghdad, I mean, those of you who are in Baghdad, they know. Right? How is Baghdad these days compared to Baghdad 5 years ago? Right? You won't believe the difference in terms of safety, in terms of places to go. So the country is enjoying a fantastic boom as a result of all of these things. And as a result, in a way, that reflects in what? Reflects in company profits. Company profit ultimately means higher stock prices. So that's what we're seeing in Iraq now.
Thank you, Sayyid Ahmed. You are the manager of the rapidly growing Iraq Asia Frontier Capital Fund, which has seen all-time highs recently. And as time and investor demand increases for Iraq, do you see more foreign institutional investors coming in?
Well, look, I was called the chief strategist of the fund. My colleague Thomas Hugger is the manager. We work together on this. I provide the strategy and stuff. So we work together on this. He's not here with me. He's actually our company, by the way, Asia Frontier Capital, is Hong Kong based. They're next door to you in a way. But we are a global company. We work everywhere. As long as we have internet, as long as we have stuff, we can work. Now, yes, I mean, our performance has been in line with the market. In fact, we've been way ahead of the market in terms of since inception and so forth. But we've enjoyed the same factors that the market enjoyed, and we've enjoyed also our own investment thesis. When we looked at Iraq in 2015, we made our minds what could happen, right? And we didn't invent it. We based it on basically everything else, because Iraq is like any other country. Once we go away from conflict, we go towards peace, the same thing happens. Iraqis are no different than any other people anywhere else. You kids in a way are no different than any other young kids, whether in Hong Kong or in China. Or what is different is how open is where we are compared. So Iraqi kids, for example, 20 or 30 years ago didn't have the opportunities that they have today, or their kids have now. But anyway, so this is we saw that, we made our mind what to do, and we benefited. Now the question is whether more institutional investors come in. The more institutional investors, they came in early on in the first time there was interest in Iraq, and basically between 2009 to 2012, there was a lot of interest. Then Daesh happened, and individuals and companies were scared. I think eventually, as Iraq begins to perform well, as people begin to look at it, as also the news flow changes. Because if you look at any reading of Iraq, any news channels, all you read about is horror stories, right? And basically, if you see all of those things, and then you talk to people like me, I mean, right now I'm in London, but I spend a great deal of my time in Baghdad, same as Hassan Amir in Baghdad. If when we see the news, we see, really, what country are they talking about? صح? That's exactly what we feel when we see that news. And as that changes, then people begin to look and say, oh, because foreign investors, institutional investors, have looked at every market. I mean, they're almost in. There is no market that they're not in. But what they need is clarity, is access, and that is something that's gradually improving.
Said Ahmed, thank you for your answer. What are the main challenges around the stock market today, and what would be needed to overcome these challenges? And also, how do you see the regulatory landscape evolving?
That's a ton of questions, but I'll try to put it very briefly. The challenges are, in a way, twofold. One is what's called technical challenge. One is called fundamental. The technical challenge, I'm not going to bore you because, well, I'll try, but I think you guys are too young to know what I mean. But in a sense, a market is actually a technical market in a way. There is a market structure. Like when you see a stock price, let's say you see a stock price today that trades at a dinar. How do you buy that stock, right? How do you buy it? So, those of us who are on the market, like imagine you are in a supermarket, right? In a supermarket, you go in and you want to buy some chocolate or ice cream. You look at the price and you buy it. In the market, there is what's called bid and offer, which means basically, the seller might want to sell the ice cream at a dinar, but I might want to buy it at 900 fils. So there's a structure whereby what's called bid and offer, right? There's also something called market maker. Have you ever seen pictures of the New York Stock Exchange? I mean, if you've seen those pictures of the New York Stock Exchange, well, what you see is something called a trading post, which is like an area, and you have people come in there, right? That's in a way what's called a specialist system, whereby one person or one organization take care of various bids and offers and make sure there's an orderly market. In Iraq and the Middle East, that's still very early, still doesn't exist as such. So there's a technical challenge facing the market in terms of the market architecture. In time, that will evolve a function of two things: more investors, more institutional investors, because institutional investors are very different from individual investors. They're different in not only in their size, but in their outlook. So an institution, for example, would think of something as risk reward. The basic, simplest thing in that is, let's say you see a stock price that goes up, 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 right? Even though an institution might know the stock price will keep on going, they might decide to sell some of it. An individual will not. Why would the institution do that? Because basically it says, oh, the stock has gone up too much. It's become a bigger portion of my portfolio, and therefore risk increases. So they do that, but also they do a lot of other functions. So in a sense, they add stability to the market. They add continuity. We don't have that. We have almost all retail, which means as soon as they buy, it's over. An institution has continuous interest in the market. So there's a lot of challenges like that people don't see. Only those who actually are active in the market can understand. That's the technical part, which takes time for the market to develop these tools, develop that ability, to develop that liquidity in a sense. Then there is the structural one, i.e. the rules and regulations. Iraq still is a country that has got a number of contradictory rules, a number of old structures that haven't changed. Our legal system, our regular system, is a mixture of socialist, market-driven, new one. And it's evolving. But like all regulations, it's always behind. So everywhere in the world, the regulation pretty much barely catches up with fundamental development. But having said that, we are going the right way. I think in many ways we're going the right way. In many ways we're going at a snail's pace. But this is the challenges of investing in a place like Iraq. You not only have to have the right investment thesis, but you have to have the right patience and the right understanding of the architecture of where you are. It's almost like, you want to go hiking and you like the idea of hiking, but you realize if you go to hiking, you got to wear boots, you got to have a tent, you got to have this million things that might not have anything to do with you going for a walk. Sure that there enough this and so the market is very much like that. So let's go to the next question.
Rian, over to you.
Hello, Sayed Ahmed. This is Rayan in Hong Kong. Sayed Ahmed, what advice would you give to students in and outside of Iraq that are looking to enter capital markets in Iraq?
Basically, do your homework. Read a lot. Do not in all investing. There is a famous saying that sort of says basically, do your homework. You've got to do your homework. There's a saying says, past performance is no guide to future performance, right? So not think and do a ton of reading. Do a ton of reading. Do your own thinking. Use sources, but also do your own analysis. I mean, I found many people, for example, would ask you for a tip on a stock. They're willing to put a ton of money into it, but when they go and buy a fridge or buy a freezer or a TV, they go to tons of places, look at them, millions of things. They open the freezer, check everything before they decide to buy it, and yet they're willing to put a ton of money into a stock. So basically, all I say is, do your homework, think about stuff, think risk reward. Can I live with the losses? Can I accept this? Am I long term? Am I short term? All of these things are major factors, but basically, do homework. Nothing can be done without homework.
Sayed Ahmed, moving on to AI, we suppose there are multiple applications from trading strategies to order workflow to compliance. In terms of direct stock market trading, how do you see AI having an impact?
Well, look, AI is a tremendous development, but the thing is, that I benefit from something called age, is you've seen development before that. In a sense, for example, I remember long enough that I'm a mathematician by training, but part of my studies was something called numerical mathematics. But we used to rely on slide rules and stuff, and I remember on calculators as well. I remember when we first came up with those programmable calculators, we thought they'd change the world. They were the best things in sliced bread. Yes, they are fantastic tools. And then we had the computer, then we had spreadsheets, then we had stuff. So all of them are phenomenal tools. In a way, AI is no different. It's actually almost like the best tool ever, but end of the day, it's a tool. It allows us, if we are clever and we know how to use it, to do the same thing that we do better. So for example, to give in a sense right now, look where we are. So, the 5 of us are in 3 different countries, yeah? And yet we are communicating real life, we're doing stuff, and based on the same tools. AI can do that. Basically, whatever we do currently right now, when it comes to the stock market, you have what's called trading strategies, right? So trading strategies basically are algorithmic trading strategies that, we'll come to them in a minute, but AI will be an advanced version of that. What will help us with, I think, greatly in compliance is the fact that one of the hardest things in compliance is to spot behavior of certain clients that are not, let's say, consistent. So banks and other places, they have to always, again, you guys are too young to fill bank account, but when you fill a bank account application, they ask you, what is your income? What is your monthly turnover? What do you expect to put in the bank? How much do you expect to go out of it? The reason why I want to do this is that if money comes in and out of your account that is different than what you indicated, then they'll question you. Not that you've done something wrong, but how is different. That is how they can spot things that go wrong, i.e. Money laundering, all that kind of stuff. So AI, with its ability to use everything we know to apply to pattern recognition, that can become a great tool for all of us. It makes the market cleaner, it enhances trading strategies, but also, by the way, will increase market volatility by a huge amount. So it has good and bad uses.
Thank you. Sayed Ahmed, a huge business in more mature markets is hedge funds using trading strategies. Could you envisage traders and practitioners using AI for their stock picks and trading strategies?
For Iraq? The question is, I doubt it. I doubt it yet. It'll take a very long time. And that's the reason. The simple reason is all of these trading strategies depend on what's called extremely liquid markets. And I don't know if you know what liquidity means, but basically think of three things. Think of a sea, think of a swimming pool, think of a puddle. And let's say you have a rock. If you throw it in the sea, what would it do? You would hardly see a ripple, right? Throw it in a swimming pool, you see a bigger ripple, a ripple. Throw it into a pond, it'll create a huge splash and a huge wave. Same thing with liquidity. All these trading strategies, they need the liquidity that is offered by the sea. So basically, they work in big markets. Iraq is like a puddle. For them, in a way, the slightest thing can either trigger action or over reaction. Their idea is that they can buy and sell in size instantly without affecting prices. In Iraq, it can't happen. Also, they need something called interconnected market because all of these trading strategies are either arbitrage, something versus another, or hedging strategies. They use interconnected market. Iraq is still not connected. It's still in its own. There's no hedging mechanism. We don't have a much developed bond market. We don't have a developed currency market. So it's almost like, you bring a Ferrari into a farm. It won't do anything. It needs a race track to work. We'll get there, but not yet.
Amir, over to you.
Thank you. Said Ahmed, how important is to enhance financial literacy among Iraq investors regarding AI technologies? What steps can be taken to educate them about these tools?
It's almost like anything else. It's like a question I gave answered earlier. Like everything else, you've got to do your work. You've got to do your work. You've got to do reading. Nothing substitute for reading. No amount of listening to gurus, to clever people, nothing can substitute for reading and knowing about it. And also in terms of technology, AI right now is the hottest thing. Right? Everybody's talking about it. Almost everybody, right? Everybody's saying something like that. But keep in mind, by the way, as I said to you, the fact is, like we've had things before like that. Remember, I mean, like you guys, take the internet for granted. Same as my son. I remember once I told him, I was talking to my younger son ages ago. He's now 28, but at the time he was much younger. And I was telling him, like every parent tells his son, and you probably heard it from your parents as well. In my day, we only had 2 TV channels. And then he started thinking at me and says, "Oh, so now you're going to tell me you had no internet?" Right? He couldn't believe that there was no world on it. The thing is, but when it came in, we assumed it would change the world. It did change the world. It made it a better place and so forth, but not what people thought. Years ago, when there was investment in the internet, there was investment in cables and and there was companies like Corning Glassworks, and there was a company called JD Uniphase that people thought of exactly the same way as they think now of what do you call it? NVIDIA. It's like the hottest thing in the planet. There's a company called Sun Microsystem, which used to do the servers for the internet. It was going up high, right? All of them, JD Uniphase, I don't know, got absorbed by somebody else. Sun Microsystem got bought by somebody else, and so there are always phases. The phase, what these phases represent, is real technology. The thing is not to fall in love with technology and not to fear it. It's like everything we've had since we've invented having the horse and the cart. Ever since we put something on a horse and started drawing it, we've been making better. Technology has gone a lot further now, fantastically more, but it's still a tool. So the question is, I tell people, no question is yes, it's a tool. Understand it, use it, but don't fall in love with it and don't fear it either. So I would say to everybody, learn it, understand what it is. Do not fall for the hype. And do not be afraid, by the way, because you'll get people who tell you, "Oh my God, it's the greatest danger to humanity." No, it's not. It's a phenomenal tool. Like any tool, can be used. And obviously, look, one of the things, we now are in the Middle East, right? I mean, we're not all of us there, but physically there. What's happening right now in terms of the thing in Gaza or in Beirut or in Lebanon and so forth? One of the things that technology brought is something called all these what do you call them? These drones, right? These drones change the whole defense landscape. Something that cost a few $1,000s or a few $100,000 can render a whole defense system that's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars useless. So technology happens irrespective of what we think, irrespective of what we like or don't like. The trick is to understand it. And so what it is, use it properly and not fear it.
Thank you, Said Ahmed. There is a lot of concern about the use of AI for non-ethical uses. What advice would you give government bodies across Iraq on regulation and best practices?
Well, I'll answer the same answer as I gave you just right now. The same thing with these things is understanding what they are. The problem with the regulators, and not in Iraq, everywhere else, we always fight yesterday's war. Nobody actually sort of goes for the future. And that's the nature of things. As I said to you earlier, regulation is always behind time. And they always overreact. Always overreact. The thing is, I mean, I don't think anybody will heed that advice, is understand technology. Understand both its pitfalls and stuff. Like, so we have right now, one of the things that's affecting us in Iraq these days is the ideas of deep fake. I.e., it's so easy to fake recordings of people say things and not say things and so on. And so, in a sense, in a country that can be sensationalized by news, is to be aware of these things. The regulators need to take into account the same thing I said earlier. It's a technology. There's nothing you can do to stop it. Technology always finds a way. Always finds a way, irrespective of what people say, because generally speaking, it makes our lives easier. It makes things better. Those of us who are smart enough to learn can adapt. Those who not adapt, die in a way. I remember one of my old bosses in a company called Jeffries, the Mr. Jeffrey in Jeffries had a sign that says, on his bathroom, a dinosaur. It says, "Adapt or die," and that's exactly what it is. We need to, all of us, to adapt. Regulators need to do the same thing, no different than any of us, and not to overreact one way or the other. Hope that answered.
Thank you, Said Ahmed. Hassan, over to you.
Hello, Said Ahmed. This is Hassan in Baghdad. At the same time, Said Ahmed, people are very concerned about massive job losses because of AI. What would Iraq need to do to adopt as AI becomes more widespread?
That, by the way, sadly, is a truth. Every technological advance brought massive changes, and most of the time, it affected those who are least capable of dealing with it. So, in a sense, people who are less educated, people from poor background who have had no education and so forth. Again, let's go back to simple history of technology. I mean, you guys, by the way, use something called a word processor, right? Right? We're familiar with what the process does. Well, if you go back, in the early 90s and stuff, before they became widespread or before computers became cheap enough, every office had a large number of what's called secretaries, who all would do was type letters, right? Managers, whether they're female or male, they had secretaries, male or female secretaries. Their job was to book your train ticket, to book this, book that kind of stuff for you, do your typing, do your stuff. Now, all of us type our own emails, type our own letters. Nobody now writes, gives it to somebody, and then says some whole industries changed. Same thing with technology came in. The more technology we use, think of robotics in factories. One of the things that happened in the US and elsewhere is the loss of jobs to third markets, but also technology plays a factor. Years ago, when I was your age, you'd visit I haven't visited, I've seen pictures of or videos of a car factory. It's full of people doing stuff. Now all you see is robotic arms doing millions of stuff and barely a few human beings sitting and pressing a few things. This will do the same. It will do the same. You can't stop it. You really cannot stop it. So you can't fight it. But what you need to do is try to develop a resilient social system whereby you take care of the unfortunate. If we don't, by the way, we can have the same backlash that we see in Europe today, we see in the US today, in which they're anti-immigration, they're anti-technology, anti-opening up, all of that comes in from various job losses. Technology is one of them. That is unavoidable. But what we can do is develop social welfare systems that we can take care of the vulnerable people of society, of the less fortunate members of our society. But you can't stop the tide. It happens whether we like it or not.
Thank you, Said Ahmed. Finally, Said Ahmed, we have to ask you one last question. Bitcoin is now at an all-time high and the brink of crossing 100,000. Could you see Iraq adopting or using Bitcoin?
The simple answer is no, but not only Iraq, everybody else in the world. And that's not to do with whether Bitcoin is good or not. I mean, forget the fact what it is. Bitcoin, in a sense, the same thing. The one thing that you mentioned to me, the fact is going to 100,000. What was it 2 months ago? More like 40,000, right? Okay. The thing is with money, whether we use it, adapt it as money, or whether we adopt it as money, or whether we adopt it as a reserve currency, is we need stability. So, for example, if today, right, I am going to buy a house, and the house, let's for argument's sake, is selling for $100,000, and I have 1 Bitcoin. If I think like Bitcoin was 40,000 just 2 months ago now, or 3 months ago, and now it's 100,000, would I pay that for the house? Would I give something that I know today is worth 100,000, but tomorrow will be worth 120? Would I use it to buy for a house? Of course not, because the house will not go to 120 in 1 week, yet Bitcoin can. Same thing, on the other hand, the seller of the house, he will say, yes, please, give me 1 Bitcoin. Because he'll sell me something that's not going to go. So in a sense, that's Bitcoin and all these other coins, they became an asset class. Now, I am on the skeptical side of the asset class, but nevertheless, I accept it's there. It's the fact that it goes up and volatile in prices makes using it as a means of exchange, i.e., would you go in and pay your school fees with it? Would your parents pay an airline ticket with it? You wouldn't, because if I think it's going to go down, then obviously I'll go and buy as many air tickets as I can, or I go buy many houses as I can, because I'll give somebody worth something that will drop tomorrow. So as long as it's that kind of an asset, it will not be used. Nobody will use it. And the funny thing is, by the way, the designers of Bitcoin, they designed it to be used instead of money. But the fact that it keeps on going up in prices because there's a lot of speculation, it makes using it, same thing with a reserve currency. A reserve currency in any country, by the way, a reserve currency is not spare money. A reserve currency is matched by local currency. So when our central bank gives us a dinar, it has $1.3 in its money. And so if I use something that goes up and down, that means my liabilities either go up and or go down. Creates instability. So in a way, no. I mean, but will it continue to be an exciting asset? I'm pretty sure. But as long as it's volatile like this, there's no chance, in I don't know, there's no chance of a snowflake in hell that it can exist as a currency. But as an investment class, it's a different story. I hope I've answered your questions.
Thank you, Said Ahmed, and we hope to talk to you again on AI4Iraq.
My pleasure. Thank you, young people. It's wonderful to speak to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please like and subscribe.